Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'll explain the absolute value. We will see together what's the absolute value of positive numbers like 2, what's the absolute value of negative numbers like -2, and what's the absolute value of some operations like the absolute value of -6 plus 5. Also, we will see together why we define the absolute value of a variable x as x when x is greater than or equal to 0, as negative x when x is less than 0. Now, what's the definition of the absolute value? The absolute value, or modulus sometimes we call it, of a real number x, denoted by, this is the how we denote the absolute value, is the non-negative value of x. And be careful, it's the non-negative. It's not only the positive, because we include 0, and we will see an example. Sometimes we define the absolute value of a number x as what? As the distance of this number from 0. Let's start with the examples. Now, what's the absolute value of 2? Let's define it as the distance. This is 0, this is 1, and this is 2. Now, what's the distance between 2 and 0? 1 unit, 2 units. So the answer here should be 2. The second example, -2. This is 0, -1, and -2. Now, what's the distance between -2 and 0? This is 1 unit, and this is the second unit. So the answer should be 2. That's why we said the absolute value of a number should be non-negative. Why? In case of 2, we took it as it is. But in case of -2, we should take it as 2 only, not -2. There's no distance equal -2. It should be +2. Now, what's the absolute value of 0? The absolute value of 0, the distance between 0 and itself is 0. Do you remember what I said? I said the absolute value should be non-negative because it's possible for the absolute value to be equal to 0. Now, let's see the reason why we define the absolute value of any variable x as either x when x is greater than or equal to 0 and -x when x is less than 0. Let's apply this definition on the following 2 examples. Now, we define here the absolute value of x, it's equal x if x is greater than or equal to 0. Take example number 1 and take example number 3. The absolute value of 2 is equal to. The absolute value of 0 is equal 0. So if what is inside the absolute value is either positive or 0, it means greater than or equal to 0, write it as it is. So what is inside the absolute value, write it as it is. This is in case of 2 and in case of 0. Now, if what is inside, this is x, by the way, this x could be positive and could be negative. If what is inside the absolute value is negative, which means less than 0, then multiply by negative. This is not a negative value. This means take x and multiply by negative. This is exactly the case here. The absolute value of -2, as if it is equal negative, take the value here, the value, this is x, -2, multiplied by, as I said, by negative. Negative by negative will give us what? The +2 or 2. So this is the definition. If what is inside the absolute value is greater than or equal to 0, write it as it is. If it is negative, then multiplied by negative sign. Negative with negative will give you a positive value. So negative x give us positive in case that x is less than or equal to 0. Let's continue with the examples. Now, what if we have an operation inside the absolute value? Let's do the operation inside the absolute value and keep the absolute value. So it's the absolute value. We know that 1 minus 7 is a negative 6. So what's the absolute value of negative 6? We said if it is negative, then convert it to be positive. So it's 6. Negative 2 plus 5. We know that negative 2 plus 5 is equal to 3. Now what's the absolute value of 3? It's 3. Now what if we have a number outside the absolute value and multiplied by it? First of all, we have to get rid of the absolute value. So it's 4 times what is inside the absolute value. What is the inside the absolute value is 5. So the absolute value is 5. 4 times 5 is 20. Negative 2 times 5 times the absolute value of 5. Again, it's negative 2. Keep it as it is. And now the absolute value of 5, we know that's equal to 5. The answer is negative 10. Now be careful. You might ask, why we have a negative 10 and we have an absolute value? Again, this absolute value does not cover the negative 2. That's why the negative 2, it's multiplied by a positive value, which is the absolute value. Now what about here? Example number 8. The absolute value of 2 minus 8 minus another absolute value, 5 plus 2. What is inside the first absolute value here? 2 minus 8 is known to be negative 6 minus 5 plus 2 is 7. Now get rid of the absolute value. What's the absolute value of negative 6? It's 6. Minus the absolute value of 7, 7. 6 minus 7 is known to be negative 1. Example number 9. The absolute value of 1 minus 7 minus 3 times the absolute value of 2. Now, what is inside the absolute value is 1 minus 7. We know that 1 minus 7 is equal negative 6. Minus 3 times the absolute value of 2. What's the absolute value of negative 6? It's 6. Minus 3 times the absolute value of 2 is 2. Now be careful. Don't say that 6 minus 3 is equal 3 times 2. The answer is 6. No. According to the order of operation, this is wrong. You have to start with the multiplication if you have addition and subtraction. So it's 3 times 2. So it's 6 minus 3 times 2 is 6. 6 minus 6 is equal to 0. Example number 10. Negative 4, the absolute value of negative 4 squared. Let's do the absolute value. What's the absolute value of negative 4? It's known to be 4 squared. 4 squared is known to be 16 because it's 4 times 4, which is equal to be 16. Example number 11. Negative 2 times the absolute value of negative 3 cubed. I'll keep the negative 2. What is inside the absolute value is negative 3. And the absolute value of negative 3 is equal to 3. And then cubed. If you have a multiplication and exponent, according to the order of operation, do the exponent. So it's negative 2 times 3 cubed means 3 times 3 times 3, which is equal to be 27. Negative 2 times 27 is equal to 54. Example number 12. Now we have a big absolute value here. And then an absolute value of negative 8, and an absolute value of negative 2, negative 3 squared. What's the absolute value of negative 8? It's known to be 8 plus negative 2, negative 3 is equal to negative 5, but we have an absolute value. So what's the absolute value of negative 5? It's 5 squared. I'll continue. The absolute value of 8 plus what's the 5 squared is equal to be 25. And 8 plus 25 is equal 33. What's the absolute value of 33? It's 33. Please like and share the video. Please also subscribe in the channel. Thanks for watching.